We're live. Good evening. Welcome to Beaumont City Council regular council meeting for Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. Here at 6 p.m. in City Council chambers. I'll call the meeting to order at right at 6 o'clock, and we begin with the land acknowledgement. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and the cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether it be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect, honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. Madam Clerk, are there any changes this evening to our agenda?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any changes to the agenda this evening.
Thank you. Member Council willing to move the adoption of the agenda when the motion is put on the screen?
Mayor, I move that the March 25th, 2025 council agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion on the motion, members of Council? Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting process for the motion? Our agenda this evening is open forum. Madam Clerk, any open forum guests this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any open forum guests this evening.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please put the consent agenda motion on the screen, please? I'll ask a member of council to move consent agenda, or if any council members want to take something off of consent, please let me know. Member of council willing to move consent agenda? Councilor McCook?
Do you need me to read it all?
Oh,
Mayor,
can you see that one okay?
I can go ahead and read it out if that helps.
Would you mind reading it out, please?
Council
Thank you.
consent to approve the following agenda items
I might
without
those.
debate. The primary care support grant policy approval, that council policy number C57, primary care support grant policy as set out in attachment 1 of the March 25th, 2025 report be approved. And bylaw 1079-25, 2025 fees and charges amending bylaw, first, second, and third reading. That bylaw 1079-25, 2025 fees and charges amending bylaw, a bylaw to amend certain fees, rates, and charges for municipal services be given first reading. That bylaw 1079-25 be given second reading. That bylaw 1079-25 be considered for third reading, and that bylaw 1079-25 be given third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yep, Councillor Cook moves that motion. Thank you very much. Discussion on motion from members of council on the consent agenda. Seeing no discussion, would you please initiate the voting process for the consent agenda motion? Mr. Penrod, hit it one more time, please. They're being sensitive today. Thank you. That carries unanimously, 7-0. Is item 5.1, bylaw 1067-25, public notification bylaw, public hearing, second and third readings. Madam Clerk, would you please read out the process for this evening's public hearing and second and third reading, please, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome to the March 25th, 2025 City of Beaumont public hearing for bylaw 1067-25, public notification bylaw. Public hearings are an opportunity to speak to council on advertised bylaws and certain resolutions. I'll spend a few moments providing an overview of the public hearing process. We've been accepting written submissions in the weeks preceding the public hearing. The deadline for written submissions was noon on March 24th, 2025. All written submissions received by the deadline have been provided to council in advance of this hearing for their review and also available for public inspection on the agenda page of the city's website. Registration to present at the public hearing by electronic means was required by 4 p.m. on March 24th, 2025. Registration to present in person is permitted in advance of the public hearing or at the public hearing. Currently, we do not have any registered speakers for today's public hearing and do not have anyone participating by electronic means. The procedure for this evening's public hearing is as follows. Administration will first make a presentation and council will be invited to ask questions of clarification. Next, members of the public who are not registered to speak, who are present today, will be invited to make their respective presentations. If anyone here has not yet registered to speak, please raise your hand. Council will first hear from those who are in favor of the proposed bylaw, and then those who are opposed, and then anyone else wishing deemed to be heard. Presenters will have up to 5 minutes to present, and council will have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification. When is it your turn for your presentation, please ensure your microphone or audio is working and state your full name for the record before beginning your presentation. You will have 5 minutes. To start with your presentation, there will be a clock on the screen in front of you to track your 5-minute allotted time. Please remain at the microphone once you have done presenting, as council may ask questions following your presentation. Once council has heard all the presentations, the public hearing will be closed and the regular session of council will reconvene so that council may make a decision on the matter. All of the city's public hearings are recorded as a webcast, which will be made available for viewing at the city's website.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That contains that. So at this time, I'll declare the public hearing open. And with that, I'll invite Ms. Guiva to please present on behalf of administration to council. Let's see here. Your microphone is now on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council, Mayor, and members of the public. My name is Grace Cueva. I am here on behalf of administration to present today's public hearing presentation on Bylaw 1067-25. Under the Municipal Government Act, municipalities must provide notice for bylaws, resolutions, meetings, public hearings, or other things requiring advertising under statute, and a municipality may provide this notice by a method prescribed under a public notification bylaw if one is passed. Similarly, under the Local Authorities Election Act, a municipality must provide notice for nomination day, election, and advance vote, and may provide that notice as prescribed by a public notification bylaw. The city currently has a public notification bylaw, and that would be 918-18, and it states that the city must provide a notice once a week for 2 consecutive weeks in advance in a local newspaper, city website, a city's official social media site, and or digital sign. The proposed bylaw changes in front of council today is that bylaw 1067 would require the city to provide notice 10 business days in advance, and that notice would need to be provided on the city website and the local newspaper if one is in operation. The main change would allow administration to take into account statutory holidays and will transition statutory notices from predominantly the newspaper to the website. The city may also continue to use additional mediums such as social media. Public engagement was conducted in fall of last year, and from the 3 channels listed on the slide, the website was shown to be the most utilized channel for residents referred to. This in consideration with regional municipal bylaw standards, as well as financial feasibility, channel availability, reliability, and city operational considerations all that was taken into consideration, and from this, administration proposes the website as the primary channel moving forward. That said, social media and the newspaper will still continue to be utilized. It was noted at the first reading of this bylaw that there was potential for reduced advertising cost. Administration has confirmed that reduction in cost can have a savings of up to $700 to $1,100 per public hearing notice in the newspaper. This would be due to a reduction in the notices ad footprint size on the newspaper, as well as transitioning from posting in the newspaper twice before the event occurring to once. Administration would also like to note that something somewhat not related to this bylaw, but originating from the bylaw review process, that there arose an opportunity for administration to provide an online registration form for residents wishing to speak at a public hearing or provide their written submission. So this would increase the ways that public can register to participate at a public hearing. This will be launched later this week. So going forward, after today's public hearing, there are requirements that the council must be satisfied that the notification methods will effectively reach a substantial portion of the relevant residents, as well as statute notice of bylaw 1067-25 being posted according to the current public notification bylaw, and a public hearing must occur. The latter two have been taken into account and are completed. Therefore, administration recommends that following the public hearing, council give bylaw 1067-25 public notification bylaw second and third reading. And that concludes my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guiva. Appreciate it. Wait for the debate portion, and then we'll have it in the proper part of the discussion this evening. So with that, I'll open up the questions for members of council for clarifying. Councilor Natelabas, Nathan, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Cuerva. Just a couple questions. I know there's the one slide there with the bylaw comparison, but I think it's important, I guess, just quickly, a brief summary as to A, I guess, why we're making this change, and B, what are the true benefits in the adjustments that we're making, or what do we feel the true benefits will be for the general public in terms of making sure we get the message across maybe more clear?
For sure. So currently, the bylaw 918-18 has some language that can create some confusion as to where is the source where residents can find that statutory notice. And the proposed bylaw has more clarification. It specifically states that the notice will be posted on the website as well as the newspaper. The bylaw also takes into consideration things like trends and the operational feasibility of the newspaper. So for example, if a newspaper currently goes out of operation, the city might need to then change the bylaw in reaction to that. The proposed bylaw will take into account that and be a proactive step. As for does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And then I guess just for clarity, because I know the newspaper is very important to many in terms of a source of information. So just for clarity, our intention at this point in time is not to remove any of these communications from the newspaper. However, it's more as a proactive measure in the event that newspaper is not available to us in the future. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, that is correct. So in our public engagement, we found that a predominant amount of citizens still utilize the newspaper, and we don't want to take away from that. So this just adds to the channels that are available, and it doesn't necessarily specify which mediums that we can use as additional, but it allows us that flexibility for newspaper, website, and anything else.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Penrod? Philip, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Just a couple other clarifications on the slides that you presented. So on the slide bylaw comparison, it looks like the old bylaw 918-18 puts a different level of emphasis on the newspaper and the website, and then offers social media and digital signage as a document. I noted that each is an and/or document. I noted that each is an and/or, so all four of those are options, and it's kind of a cocktail up to administration on any one. So just wanted to clarify that piece. So again, to Councillor Natellenbos's point, we haven't really the proposal doesn't look to me like it's taking anything off the table. We're just moving into clearer language around what must take place and what may take place. The second clarification is just around, on the slide, next steps. And that one, I guess I just want to clarify in the requirement for council satisfaction, I think reach a substantial portion of the relevant residents is not maybe quite as clear as the legal language in the bylaw, which is, I believe, substantially all residents, which my understanding is that's a threshold of, in case law, between 80 and 90%. So again, I just wanted to clarify that as I'm making decisions on hearing from folks in the public presentation and deciding down the road, that's the threshold that I want to keep in my mind. So just wanted to point those out. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, members of council, for clarification, I'll move into the public hearing portion of the public hearing. Anybody from the public here who wishes to speak in favor of the bylaw? Seeing none in attendance, I'll move then to second part. Seeing nobody in the audience. The third thing is anybody in the audience who deems themselves to be affected by the bylaw who wishes to speak. Also seeing nobody from the members of the public at this time. So with that, Madam Clerk, I'll declare the public hearing concluded. And with that, I will move second reading of the bylaw, at which time council can then debate the bylaw and move it forward through our process this evening. Thank you. I move that bylaw 1067 public notification bylaw be given second reading. With that, I won't speak to it, and I'll allow my members of council who wish me to speak to second reading at this time. Any members of council who wish to speak to second reading or debate the bylaw? Councilor McCook, Kat, you have the floor.
No debating. We've had this We've had this in front of
okay.
in front of council a couple times now, so I don't have additional questions. I just want to note that this bylaw, or the update to this bylaw, reflects a recognition that our previous approach just wasn't adequate for our residents, for the understanding of, lot block numbers compared to addresses, and some of these changes will be much improved and much appreciated. It'll allow for clarity, more simplified language, and then with the signage posted, as some people miss some of the other notices, that will be improved as well. And I think this is just a step forward in continuous improvement in our community, which ensures better communication and accessibility for our community members. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Comments are well received, I think, by everybody on council and the public. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor, Phil.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. And to Councillor McCook's point, I just wanted to clarify, this bylaw change, does it relate to signs posted on development sites and to language of development notices in advertisements and design of those?
Ms. Gueva, you want to take a crack at that answer?
To my understanding, and perhaps maybe planning or Joanne can follow up, but it does not. Those requirements are addressed under the land use bylaw.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we have had in quick succession two quite similar bylaw adjustments. And so my question really was around how does this work in front of us tonight relate to and overlap with the recently amended update bylaw 108025, development notifications land use bylaw, and together how does administration anticipate our communication with the public improving? Thank you.
Ms. Darjay?
Thank you, Mayor. Through to Councillor Penrod. I can take a stab at answering probably a portion of that. So this bylaw applies to those statutory requirements under the MGA that we are required to provide notification. That's what this will take care of. The land use bylaw amendments that are being brought forward by planning under a separate bylaw are the notices and requirements that they provide through the planning process that aren't necessarily statutory requirements, but are notifications of development that are provided on certain properties. This is the public notification bylaw is with respect to things like, pardon me, bylaws that require a public hearing. So that's kind of the difference, the nuanced difference between those two.
You're good, Councillor? Thank you. Good point, actually, on clarifying the two different things. They are two different ideas altogether. This is still good for our residents. Councillor McCook, a follow-up?
Just my misspeaking. I misspoke on that then. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, no problem. Appreciate that. Any further members of council, any council members, any further discussion or debate on second reading of this bylaw? Seeing none, I will make a comment too, that back up what Councillor Penrod said, it is a good and helpful thing to our residents to get more clarification on how we can communicate with them. It's good feedback for our community, so appreciate that. Seeing no further comments for second reading, would you please initiate the voting process for second reading, please? And that carries unanimously, 7-0 in favor of second reading. Remember, Council willing to move third reading of the bylaw. Councillor Penrod, would you make that motion, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that bylaw 1067-25, public notification bylaw, be given third reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion on the motion, members of council? I'm seeing none. Would you please initiate then the voting process for third reading? And that carries unanimously, also 7-0 in favor of third reading. On that presentation. Next on our agenda, this evening is we have item 6.1, e-scooter pilot program implementation council report. Mr. Meninga, did I get that correct? Thanks, pretty close. I'll take close on a Tuesday night. I'll have your microphone on here in a moment. And I believe when you are ready, sir, please be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Danluck and members of council and public. My name is Trevor Monica with Long Range Planning. I'll be presenting this evening on the proposed implementation framework for the e-scooter pilot program here in Beaumont. I'm joined here tonight by my manager, Jonas Wong, and we have representatives of a number of other departments who have contributed to this project and will be doing so going forward. In September 2025, Council passed a motion for administration to proceed with preparing the operating framework for a 2-year e-scooter pilot program. The report aims to provide Council with the proposed details of the framework with a planned start window of summer 2025. The report includes both an operating framework for the city, as well as a vendor operating framework that outlines the conditions and requirements for the vendor and program users. For general conditions, administration recommends that the program adopt a minimum age of 16 years to use an e-scooter, which is generally consistent with other municipalities within the capital region. Helmets should be required for users under 18 years of age. Again, maintaining consistency with our existing traffic safety bylaw.
Excuse me, Nathan, could you move your microphone a little closer to you, please? It's not quite getting up here as well we'd like it to be, please. Thank you very much.
Is that better?
Much better, thank you. Sorry for the interruption, but
Nope,
we want to hear you. Thank you.
So just repeating that, helmets required for use for users under 18 years of age, which is consistent with our existing traffic safety bylaw. And helmets would be strongly recommended for users 18 years of age and over. As part of the operating framework, the vendors will have to provide suitably equipped e-scooters, including a kickstand, a bell or other auditory signaling device, lighting on the front and rear, a speed governor, internal locking mechanism, and identifiers for both the vendor and the unit. At this point, administration has identified a preliminary target of 100 e-scooters deployed within the city. It's based on similar fleet sizes deployed in similar size municipalities in the region. There may be some minor adjustments to this number as administration engages with a vendor based on their operating experience. But the intent here is to work with the vendor to right-size the fleet to meet demand for the e-scooters and to avoid having too many sitting idle and unused. Administration recommends that e-scooters be permitted to operate on paved pathways, trails, sidewalks, and paved roads where the speed limit is less than 50 kilometers per hour and there is no painted center line. The maximum default speed limit for an e-scooter is recommended to be set at 20 kilometers per hour. which again is consistent with our neighboring municipalities. We've identified 2 areas where slow zones are recommended. The first being Four Seasons Park. We've identified a speed limit of 15 kilometers per hour within Four Seasons Park, and this is due to the slightly narrower paved trails within the park and to mitigate the risk of conflicts with higher pedestrian and cyclist use. Secondly, along 50th Street between 52nd Ave and 50th Ave, set at 10 kilometers per hour to mitigate risk of conflicts due to higher pedestrian use, an increased amount of street furniture, street patios. And I would like to note on that one that e-scooters would only be permitted on the sidewalk, again, because 50th Street being posted at 50 kilometers per hour, they would not be permitted on the roadway. Administration has also identified a number of areas we're calling no-go zones where e-scooters would not be permitted. Again, to mitigate safety concerns and potential conflicts with other users. These zones would include roadways with a speed limit of 50 kilometers per hour or greater, or that have a painted center line, unpaved trails, roads and lanes, playgrounds, spray parks, dog parks, sports fields and facilities such as skating rinks, basketball and tennis courts, and skate parks, transit vehicles, terminals and stops, and anywheres indoors. With regards to e-scooter parking, administration has included several parking requirements in the program operating framework. Users will be required to park e-scooters in an upright position and within the furniture zone of the sidewalk. Now, the furniture zone is defined as the section of sidewalk located between the curb and the through zone or the walking zone. So typically where you'd see things like the street furniture and amenities such as garbage cans, trees, those types of items. E-scooters would not be permitted to be parked in any manner that impedes movement on or across the sidewalk or through a trail or in front of a building access, and it cannot impede vehicle traffic. In terms of vendor response, administration recommending that the vendor be required to respond within 2 hours to a number of issues, whether they're reported by the public or by administration. So e-scooters that are parked in violation of the framework, as we just noted, e-scooters that have been stationary for more than 48 hours, and e-scooters that are reported as non-functional or not safe to operate. As part of the vendor agreement, they will also be required to provide a customer service contact that is public-facing and 24/7 monitored. As part of the program implementation, administration has recommended the installation of 6 parking corrals to coincide with locations where the highest number of trips are expected to start and end. And these are generally located near popular services and amenities, and we've focused on recreational use of e-scooters. So the 6 here, Centreville Park, which acts as a central gathering spot near to popular restaurants and businesses, as well as proximity to the youth center. The Beaumont Community Center is also very centrally located and near to parks and trails. Four Seasons Park, located at the entrance to the city's largest outdoor recreational area, which has access to a very wide network of trails throughout. The BSRC, we've identified that the rec center may be a natural trip termination location for users who are transitioning from one recreational activity to another, and it also provides access to the LeBlanc Canal, which has a long linear trail system. Ken Nickel Regional Recreation Center, similar to the BSRC, but there's also a future opportunity to create a mobility hub here where users may transition between e-scooter and bus transportation. And finally, the Beaumont Library, which is a community node that provides access to trails on the north side of the city. Parking corrals, for the pilot program, we've identified just a simple painted parking corral type setup. There are a wide variety of options out there that different municipalities have looked at, but being a pilot, we thought we'd start small. So parking corrals would be delineated using painted lines on the sidewalk or on the pavement, donated with a sign painted on the ground, potentially a vertical sign as well. We've identified, again, those preliminary locations with the exact placement and design of the corrals to be determined in consultation with the program vendor. Depending on the success and usage of the parking corrals, they may be expanded or relocated in a future program year. The parking corrals is one of the main cost items we've identified for the pilot, and we've identified a cost estimate of $9,000 for the 6 corrals and including signage. In terms of the pilot program timelines, we've identified the 2-year pilot program as previously moved with a 2025 kickoff date of late in June. Typically, e-scooter operation season runs from May to October. It is highly weather dependent. Sometimes you'll see them start a little bit earlier if the snow melts quick enough. Administration will be collecting feedback both from the public and users and data via the vendor throughout the program, which will be used for continuous improvement and ultimately determine whether a permanent program is recommended. In terms of community engagement, administration will undertake a community engagement program that will begin with a pre-launch open house, tentatively scheduled for May 2025, and we'd be doing that in partnership with the vendor. Administration will be looking to use communication and engagement tools, including the pre-launch survey, which will be done in tandem with the open house. Also include post-season surveys at the wrap-up of each operating season. It'll be complemented with social media campaigns and newspaper advertisements, and there are plans to prepare a city webpage, which will be made available with all the program information, frequently asked questions, educational materials, and a link to the vendor's webpage and contact information. We'll have key messaging for council and the Service Experience Office in advance of the launch. And then again in 2026, prior to kind of the spring relaunch of the second program year, we'll have some additional engagement time to bring awareness to that. Finally, followed by a wrap-up survey at the conclusion of the program. In terms of bylaws and enforcement, administration will bring forward bylaw amendments to both the traffic safety bylaw and parks and facilities bylaw later this spring, prior to launch of the program. And in general, the pilot program and framework has been designed to transfer responsibility of enforcement to the vendor. Of equal importance to enforcement will be an education and awareness campaign for the general public and users regarding the program regulations and etiquette. So that'll be incorporated through the public engagement piece. As I mentioned before, public education materials will be available through the online channels and as well through the vendor's mobile app. In terms of risk and liability, we've identified through the contract agreement that the vendor will be required to indemnify the city and holds suitable commercial and general liability insurance. And then the vendor will be then responsible to communicate the relevant legislation to its users through a user agreement that outlines those applicable items. In terms of the program administration, the pilot will be co-led by 2 departments, Community Services and Economic Development. They will act as the main points of contact with the vendor, responsible for day-to-day coordination of the program operation and resolution of emerging issues. The Service Experience Office will also be supporting that directly by handling the public inquiries and complaints as they come in. A number of other departments are directly involved in supporting the initiative, including communications, corporate analytics and technology, finance, legal and legislative services, infrastructure, planning development, and protective services. There are many moving parts to the program that will involve a wide range of people. Program costs and resourcing. Administration has again recommended upfront some investment by the city to enhance the overall quality of the program and improve its success. So there's 2 items identified here, the $9,000 for the parking corrals and signage, 6 locations, as well as community engagement, again, related to the social media campaigns and advertising. So a total of $14,000 recommended for this program. We've also identified an estimate for staff resourcing. It's unknown at this stage, but expected to be around 6 to 8 hours of staff time per week, just based on talking with colleagues at other municipalities and what they see. There are some upfront costs related to staff time in developing the program, and if there are anything significant that administration notes for the first season of the program, 2025, we can look at confirming that and identifying any needs in the 2026 budget. On the revenue side, administration recommends implementing nominal permitting fees at this stage of the pilot. Given that it is a pilot program, we want to investigate the feasibility of the program in Beaumont. We want to make sure that it remains economically viable for a vendor to offer here. Administration did investigate various fee models. We do not recommend implementing any fees based on e-scooter usage. For example, a rider surcharge or a fleet deployment cost per day and compliance with the rules. From what we've found in our surveys, these types of fees are administratively difficult to manage, require detailed data collection and reporting, which is typically supported by specialized management software, which comes at an additional cost to the city. We've identified a few fee items here as listed in the table, so a flat permit fee of $1,000 and a per e-scooter permit fee and a per e-scooter deposit, non-refundable deposit, $15 and $25 respectively. So a total of $5,000 maximum revenue generation through this. As mentioned before, some aspects of the fee model, mostly related to the maximum fleet size, may need to be adjusted once we engage with a vendor and negotiate that based on their experience what will work in Beaumont. Just a quick item on data collection, just to bring some more clarity to that. The vendor will be required to provide specific data that we've outlined in the operating framework to the city so that we can evaluate the effectiveness of the pilot program, and if there's any changes that we'd like to see in the parameters, that gives us the tools and the information to make those recommendations, and ultimately, again, make that recommendation at the conclusion of the pilot as to whether a permanent program would be feasible. The next steps for this program would be for procurement of a vendor to operate the pilot and prepare a budget adjustment as noted for the program materials and infrastructure costs. Work is already underway to prepare the permitting and licensing contract for the vendor, a bylaw amendments as noted previously, community engagement starting with the pre-launch open house in May, and then installation of the parking corrals and signage immediately before the program launch. The administration recommends that council move to proceed with the pilot program next steps as set out in the report to implement the 2-year e-scooter pilot program, anticipated start date of summer 2025. Thank you. Administration welcomes any questions on the report.
Thank you, Mr. Menengo, for the presentation. Appreciate that very much. So we'll start with the motion from Councilor Telebus, and then we'll move to clarifying questions on the report, as well as moving to the debate phase of the motion on the floor. So, Councilor Telebus, when the motion on the screen, would you please make the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to put forward the motion that administration proceed with the pilot program next steps as set out in the March 25th, 2025 implementation report to implement a 2-year e-scooter pilot program with an anticipated start date of summer 2025.
Thank you, Councillor. If you wish to have any clarifying question, you may begin yourself, or I'll go to Councillor Van Newkirk with clarifying questions first. Do you wish to proceed with clarifying?
I'll proceed after. Feel free to go with
I
Councillor
have
Van
Councilor
Newkirk.
Telebus, followed by Councillor Monkoff-Swain, followed by Councillor Penrod, then of yourself. So, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Just one clarifying question around the no-go zones. Can you just confirm that those are going to be geofenced? Is that how those are going to be controlled?
Your microphone's still on.
Good. Yes, that's correct. They'll be geofenced through shapefiles that we create.
Yeah, and so you'll work with whichever vendor and make sure that the geofences are active and whatnot. The one thing I would point out is the proximity of the skate park to the sidewalk. You know, if that geofence is off by 2 or 3 meters, there might be some temptation there. And I'll also note that you guys didn't write note not to hit any sweet jumps in this report. So, you know, I think that could be an issue in the future. But thank you.
Sweet jumps, that's awesome. Councilor Gosween, Sam, you have the floor, followed by Councilor Penrod. Sam?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Councilman Tellenbosch, for bringing this forward. Looking forward to it. A couple of things on the no-go zones. You talked about playgrounds, right? It's a pretty loose definition, and so help me understand what you mean by that. So, for example, if I'm riding a scooter on a sidewalk through a playground zone, right? The park is, you know, where kids are playing and all that sort of stuff. But then the street that runs through that playground zone, like, will I be able to ride that scooter through that playground zone, like through on the sidewalk along the street?
Yes, yeah, thank you for that question and for the clarification. You're correct. You would still be able to ride down the sidewalk within that area. The intention with that is that within the rubberized surface of the playground proper, that you're not taking the e-scooter to prevent conflicts with.
Okay, yeah. So there's trails that run through our parks, and you know, presumably, and I see you're reducing speed in some areas in Four Seasons, but presumably you can still ride on those trails. You're just making sure that we can't do some sweet jumps like Steve's mentioning there. So that's good. On the parking, you talked about these corrals and the locations make sense. I assume that those are just hubs, right? So people, and the biggest concern with these is people just leave them anywhere, right? So how do we think about that? So presumably I can take the scooter from the bus to my house and leave it outside. There's no corral outside my house. And just like everywhere else, you got to take a photo of it and submit it back into the app, that sort of thing. And so our process for monitoring, you talked about the complaints. I assume we've been through all of that and just taken a look at how we can manage these scooters that are going to be thrown all over the place. So maybe just a thought on some of the background information that you'd worked with other municipalities on that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It certainly, when you're taking a scooter within a residential area, there won't be necessarily a corral nearby that you can park it. The intention there is that you are parking the scooter in compliance with the regulations here, in this case upright, out of the main path of travel, not blocking things like crosswalks, curb ramps, driveways. So if and where possible, you're parking it in a place that doesn't meet those or doesn't break any of those criteria. In the instance where someone does park it in those locations, it will be complaint driven to be relocated. So if there is a complaint that comes in within that 2-hour window, the vendor has to respond and either relocate that scooter or park it appropriately. I would expect in most cases they would relocate it, but it will be up to their discretion. The other piece is that within 48 hours, the scooter sits there and is never touched. Say you don't decide to rent it again, it has to be relocated by the vendor at that point. So there's kind of a cap on that.
Yeah, and I probably should have started with this, but a lot of thought going into it. Really appreciate all the research that you've done with the other municipalities. Obviously, everyone has been through this, and we're the benefactor of seeing some of the pain that they've experienced. The 2 hours thing, and if it's in here, I apologize, but I was curious about that because, you know, within to respond to that, that's pretty quick turnaround. Is there a time limit? Like, if I make a complaint at 2 a.m., we don't expect them to get there before 4 a.m. So, like, how do you, like, have we got that far? And again, sorry if it's in here, I just didn't see it.
No, thank you for that question. That is a good question. I don't think we've gotten that far with the specifics of the response time, like off-peak or off-business hours. We haven't got to that discussion with the vendor yet, but that's...
Yeah, I just encourage you to, because someone's going to look at that. They're going to text Steve and be like, how come this isn't happening? So let's save Steve some texts. Just to clarify when, what that 2-hour window, where that comes within. A couple more, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, here.
Yes.
On the project engagement, and so I might look at Mr. Berezowski here on this. Got to be really careful when we talk about project engagement, and I won't dive into the IP2 spectrum, but like we're talking about open houses, and we're not. I just want to make sure that we're clear that we're not asking people whether we should be doing this, right? Like this is more information out, right? Is that how you're seeing this?
Yes, thanks you for that. That's correct. It's more of an awareness and educational tool at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great. And just, I think just being clear on that and the things about where to park, how to park, like all that education, that this could be a very, very good pilot, a very good program, I should say. And as you know, it all comes down to awareness of how to use it. Not everyone's going to follow the rules, we all know that, but generally, I'm supportive of this. I like it. The last thing, and I'm surprised Councillor Van Newkirk didn't bring it up, so I will. What's going to happen is everyone's going to take these scooters from, I'll call it, can I say Main Beaumont? Historically Main Beaumont, and head north, right? They want to go to the brewery, up along that 50th Street with a pretty dicey shoulder there. Have we thought about that? Just the safety of crossing, 510 there and then heading north and pulling in where it's a lot of gravel, cars hopefully driving 50k an hour, but most likely not. So just curious if there's been any thought around kind of 510 north into La Reve, particularly into that brewery.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Right now, with the way the program's laid out, we're recommending that scooters aren't permitted on roads with 50 kilometers an hour or greater speed limit. They would not be permitted to travel down 50th Street north of 510, as there's no trail or sidewalk there currently. So essentially that area would be geofenced. Like the roadway would not be operable on the roadway there, except for crossing 50th Street to get to either side of.
Yeah, okay. The geofencing is going to have to be pretty accurate. So, okay, I hear you. What I'm taking from that, and that makes sense, is if you're in La Reve, there'll be scooters in and around there, and you can do what you want within La Reve, but as soon as you get out in front. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, really appreciate, again, the in-depth. You guys have thought of everything. So I'll be supporting this, and again, thanks for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, followed by Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor McCook, and then Councillor Telbus, pardon me, and then I might just jump in the conversation. Phil, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk, and appreciate the report, Mr. Maninka. Also looking forward to this, to the pilot, and I think the mayor is fond of saying it's not always advantageous to go first, so this is a situation where some other municipalities have rolled out programs like this and pilots, and we are the beneficiaries of some of the problem solving they've done. So appreciate the work that's gone into reaching out and learning from other folks such as the people down in Leduc. Question related to Councillor Muncuff-Swain's around vendor response. I noticed that the vendor is required to provide 24/7 customer service. So I think that implies that we're imagining service for the scooters will operate 24 hours a day. I just wonder if we had any conversations with other municipalities or if we contemplated, as we laid out the parameters for this pilot, a quiet period in a given day, like maybe they don't operate between the hours of 1:30 a.m. and 5:30 a.m., something like that. Or maybe that's to come in negotiation with the vendor. Just wondering if you could speak to that, please.
Yes, yeah, thank you for that question. Excellent question. I haven't been made aware of any restrictions in operating periods for e-scooters currently, and that will be something we'll have to discuss with the vendor. We have not put that into the framework at this point.
Yeah, I would just submit that the likelihood of people trying for sweet jumps increases in those early morning hours, I would guess. So, other question, I think I was reminded in your presentation, so thanks for that, that there is a bylaw review that will happen to kind of comb through our parks and facilities and traffic safety bylaws for changes that need to happen there. While we're doing that, are we also searching for any tweaks or changes necessary for privately owned and operated e-scooters or e-bikes. I'm just, as you were doing your presentation, I was imagining someone with their governed e-scooter in Four Seasons going 15, getting rapidly lapped by people doing a lot faster than that on their privately owned units, so.
Yeah, thank you for that question. The use of private e-scooters right now, still under the Alberta Traffic Safety Act, is not permitted on public roadways, to my understanding. So that's not something that we can manage within our own municipal bylaws.
Okay.
So the vendor will be required to get an exemption from the province to operate their fleet within Beaumont under that.
So I guess to that end, we're entering into this contract with this private vendor, providing a service for the city. I wonder how they feel about other people where they have had to go and meet the test of getting a special exemption and additional safety. It was actually the helmet rule that twigged for me for this. So we're asking them to meet a certain level of standard, and then there's other folks in the community kind of riding in the Wild West. So I just wonder if that's a directive that goes to our local enforcement to enforce some of those rules, or if it's complaint driven again, or how we anticipate handling that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think with regards to the current environment for the private e-scooters, it is complaint driven right now, or kind of as seen by enforcement. So I don't think that would change. It might become more apparent when you have the public program available, where you're seeing the private e-scooters that are exceeding the speed limits, or maybe not wearing helmets, things like that. Yeah.
Leo Schwartz, you want to make a comment at this point?
Yeah, just to build off of that, if we start receiving a whole bunch of complaints, then we'll start doing some patrols. But yeah, that's as mentioned, it's the vendor's responsibility, but we're going to live and learn.
Thank you. Councilor Barnhart. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really glad it's happening, and I'm really glad it's a pilot, because I think we're going to learn an awful lot through this experience. But I really am happy that you brought this forward, Councilor Ntellenbus, because I think it is again addressing the needs of our young community and our vibrancy. I think it's going to be exciting to see how this unfolds. I don't even think we know the half yet of what might happen. But I'm not saying that because I'm trying to jinx it in any way. I think it's actually going to be a great pilot. One of my questions, again, many of these questions will get answered as the pilot unfolds, but in the no-go zones, it says parking lots are not allowed. They can't go in a parking lot. And then in the slide presentation, it talks about the popular services and amenities that people will take the scooters too. I'm not sure how you go into Ken Nickel without going in through a parking lot. So I'm kind of like, how are those two things going to work out? Like, I understand we don't want them to park in the parking lot, park in the corral, but to say it's a no-go zone in a parking lot, again, it's communication. Please explain that to me so that I understand that better.
Yes, thank you for that. I apologize for the confusion on that item. I think it's more intended with regards to private parking lots for use of e-scooters. So generally, we'd like to see the scooters stay on the trail or sidewalk in those locations. In specific sites like Ken Nickel, we would look at that during the geofencing stage, and we're preparing those shapefiles to delineate. Specific site access will be considered at that stage. So it's not intended as a blanket, no parking lots whatsoever, but more to prevent the conflicts with e-scooters and vehicles backing out of parking stalls in the private parking lots.
And just one follow-up,
Please.
Mayor. Thank you for that. I appreciate the clarification. And I agree with Councillor Penrod about the traffic bylaw and how there could potentially be some real confusion. E-bikes are another example. It may have changed already, but I thought we had a bylaw that said we could not ride bikes on the sidewalk. Well, if you're, only if you were under a certain age you could, and I don't know, again, I've not kept up and checked to make sure if it's still that way, but when that comes forward, I don't think we can have so many different rules, it'll be very hard for people to understand. So to clarify that and make it consistent would be my hope, and I look forward to seeing that when it comes through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilman Cook. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you, and I echo my fellow councillors. Thank you, Councillor Natellenboss, for bringing this forward. I think it definitely gives our residents enhanced mobility options in our community, which is great. Just a few questions. So we said we're going to do a bit of a review after year one, perhaps make some adjustments, then look at it after that. What metrics will we determine the program's success? What will we kind of look at?
Thank you for that. Sorry, I'm just flipping to my notes here.
That's okay.
I don't think we've fully identified like a threshold or a bar for a successful program at this stage. But given the data collection items, number of trips per day, kind of length of trips, if we see any movement in the number of e-scooters that are deployed in the city, if there's a lot of demand on the initial 100 and the vendor is looking to deploy more, I think those are all kind of indicators that the program is being well used. We will also look for the feedback from the users and from the general public on, the ease of use, whether they like the program. Certainly there'll be some complaints that we'll have to take into consideration. Typically, in speaking with City of Leduc and others, they've seen the positive reception of the program kind of improve throughout the pilot. So after the first year, they had some responses, and then after the second year, they saw an uptick in the positive responses on that. So I think it's a matter of people kind of getting used to the change and the scooters. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, I think anytime you have some sort of change and more activity and stuff like that, there's a little bit of concern, and then it starts to die down a little bit. Just to build off that, what kind of feedback kind of mechanisms will we have in place for residents to express their concerns or provide input? Will that be kind of throughout the pilot, or will it only be at the end?
Well, thank you for the question. Certainly up front, they'll have the opportunity through the survey and the open house. And then we'll have a city webpage with the FAQs, but also with contact information for the vendor to provide feedback that way. We haven't spoken to a vendor yet, but I believe they will also want to do their own surveys. And they also have feedback mechanisms through their mobile apps as well. The Service Experience Office will also have the messaging for that, for any calls that do come in or emails that come in. And those will be passed on to the co-lead departments as well for consideration for future improvements to the program.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So throughout the program, we will be tracking through the service portal to be able to kind of collect that feedback at the end. Okay. Anytime something happens and somebody wants to say something right away, I don't want them to have to wait till a survey at the end, because then often people forget or don't remember to do it. And then I presume this is probably in our contract, but can you just clarify how we will ensure that the vendor is accountable for compliance and all the things that we saw here?
Yeah, the contract that's being prepared in draft format right now is going to include the entire operating framework that was included in the agenda package, as well as some standard terms and conditions regarding supplier performance and evaluation. So those will be our main mechanisms to hold them accountable for performance, with a little bit of the added focus on that response time, as we've outlined, the 2 hours and the 48 hours for dealing with the scooters that are in violation or idle.
Thank you for clarifying and highlighting. Yeah, I think the fact that this is a pilot, I think it's a great opportunity for people to make use out of it and to provide the necessary feedback if they choose to. And I appreciate all the work that's gone into this report. It definitely appears that we've put in a lot of work and effort into making sure we're trying to cover all the angles on this one. So I look forward to seeing the pilot unfold. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Telebas. Nathan, you have the floor, and I'll make a comment or two, then we'll go to the vote.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. I guess just starting off, I didn't realize we had such a youthful and cool council here talking about all the sick jumps they're going to hit. But it is important that it should be noted because it is a concern. Obviously, safety, especially with younger folks, it is a concern with this program. So it's important that it's brought up. And obviously, we have some mitigation plans to protect that. One of the questions I have, I guess, relates to either you're going to appreciate this program or you'll see it as a burden. So for appreciating it is obviously an alternate means of transportation to get around town, which is critical, especially to some that potentially don't have vehicles or can't get around or can't get a ride or continuously having to pay for a cab at a significant cost. For those that see it as a burden in conversations that I've had with folks, it tends to be more on the placement and leaving around these units, and it just becomes a nightmare in that sense. Are we able to speak, obviously, we talk about the 2-hour requirement from the vendor, but speak to the level of accountability that will hold these vendors to adhere to their contractual requirements? Because it's one thing to say it, but I do want to make sure that it's enforced and that we make sure our vendors are actually acting appropriately and according to contract, or we'll nullify that contract and find someone that's willing to do that.
Yes, yeah, thank you for that question. Certainly, we will be looking to enforce that response time, and that is something we've identified as 2 hours. Is one of the quickest in the region. A number of other municipalities have slightly more lax response times. So that being something we heard was important within the city is why we identified that quick response. Certainly, as you mentioned in the contract, there are conditions regarding performance, vendor performance, and if they aren't meeting their obligations under that contract, then that contract can be terminated at that point.
Perfect, thank you. And I mean, I don't want to hold you to this, but I hear the term can, and I appreciate that. And I know we're not going to say, oh, it's done right away, but I do want to make sure we're just not super lenient because it is a concern of residents that these are just going to be scattered everywhere.
Certainly.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Other question, I guess, just relates to some of the requirements. Obviously, we don't want to make this an enforcement burden for our protective services as well as our police officers here. So kind of what process would protect an individual from someone who's under 16 from operating this? Like, is there some kind of age verification, or what does that process look like when you're signing into the app?
I think that that depends on the vendor and how they operate their app. At this point, we haven't discussed with any vendor how they would do age verification, if at all, at this point. So it is really up to the user to be honest about their age when signing up for the app. I do believe you need to use a credit card, so you have to have permission to use that if you're under the age of 18. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Next question relates to the helmets. I've seen some municipalities, Sylvan Lake's a good example, where helmets are provided. Is that the thought process here, or are you required to bring your own helmet to operate this?
Yeah, thank you for that question. There is one vendor that we're aware of that offers helmets with their e-scooters. The other ones that operate in the region do not, and it is left up to the user to provide their own if they're required to do so. Certainly that will be a consideration when evaluating prospective bids for the vendor to operate the program.
Perfect, thank you. And I think I have one last question. Kind of pertains to a sick jump or a wipeout. Are you able to provide some clarity as to what happens when you're going 20 kilometers an hour and you hit the no-go zone?
Thank you. That's a great question. E-scooters are supposed to decelerate in a controlled manner when that happens. Generally, there's also a notification to the user whether it's on the scooter itself or through the app, that they've entered a no-go zone and that the scooter will be slowing down to a stop.
Perfect. So then just a final comment, if I may, Mayor.
Sure.
So obviously, I brought this motion forward. I think it's important to grow with the times, so continuously improve as a municipality. There are quite a few folks and other communities that have this and have seen success with it. Leduc probably being one of our closest neighbors who have ran through a pilot program and have seen success through it. So it's important to note it is a pilot program. If it doesn't work out, then it's something we can reevaluate, but we won't know if we don't try. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a final comment, and we'll go to the vote. Just one last comment. I think Sam mentioned about the 2-hour thing. That seems very aggressive to me, to have a vendor within 2 hours moving a scooter. I don't want to have us inundated with phone calls, but if your report thinks 2 hours is reasonable, and Ben thinks so too, that's great. I just don't want probably someone who doesn't like the program saying it's been 2 hours and 4 minutes in front of my house, and he's calling right away saying, move that scooter. It'll be a bit unmanageable in some situations. So if that's what the report says, the vendor says is good, great. I would think maybe a little more time would be more reasonable to work with, but that's up to our administration, the vendor, to figure that out. My only comment was simply that. Great comments for all the members of council, really appreciate that. Mr. Meninga, you had a very good presentation. You were spot on with all your answers. Very well done, very informative to us, and we appreciate your giving us all the answers we need to make a good informed decision. So thank you for your work. Very well done. Seeing no further comments, members of council, I'm prepared to move to the vote on this motion. Again, Councilor Telebas, thank you for bringing this idea forward. I'm very excited about it as well. We'll see what happens. Would you please initiate the voting process on this pilot program? Thank you, Council. The motion is carried 7-0 in favor. Looking forward to the program coming up in 2025 and 2026. Thank you, Council. Point 3, motion following notice. Councilor Barnhart. Major events and operating grants process survey. Would you please put the notice for Councilor Barnhart to make and go from there? When you're ready, Councilor Barnhart, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that by the end of May 2025, administration survey the 2024 applicants on their experience with the major events and operating grants process, provide an opportunity for them to attend a council meeting, and provide a report back to council with the feedback and the results. If I may speak to that,
Please speak
Mayor?
when you're ready. Thank you.
The reason I brought this motion forward was in recognition of the fact that several of us on council, if not all of us, have been approached for clarification on what actually did transpire during the decision-making process for the first round of the major grants process. And council has been very focused on making this the best and fairest process it can come up with, and has been for many years. And so we do want to make sure that the funds are used appropriately and the benefit of the entire community is number one. At our last council meeting, we heard a passionate presentation from one of our esteemed business owners, Ms. Sylvia Chevrier, who wanted council to understand the impact that the decisions have had on some of the members of the community, in particular the arts organizations that had applied for this, for the operating grants. Anyway, the reason for this motion is not to bring forward any appeals or anything of that nature, but to give all residents an opportunity to speak directly to council, either in person or virtually through a survey, if that's how they choose. And I appreciate it's a 3-year process, and that's not meant to in any way change that, but to give us an opportunity as council for the next round, where I know there is some money available in the 2026 budget. So again, to give council an opportunity to hear directly from our residents and make any changes if necessary in that order. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll speak to it first. I'm in favor of the motion. Thank you for bringing it forward. Transparency is always a good thing. Communication with our user groups and public is also very important. So this motion is exactly what our council wants to do, is get feedback from our residents when we make changes and make sure we're doing the right changes for the right reasons in the long term. So I appreciate the motion being brought forward. I do plan to support the motion. Councillor Newkirk, you have the floor, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you to Councillor Barnhart for bringing this forward. I will be supportive as well. And I just want to point out that this is appointed, or what is being proposed is a pointed opportunity to speak to, the issue at hand in here. I'll also note that council is readily available for feedback at all times, and there's an open microphone session at each one of our meetings that can also be employed to provide any and all feedback that folks have throughout the municipality on any issue. So I don't think that access or availability to provide feedback is an issue, big picture, but I really would like to support this pointed gathering of feedback. Thank you.
Good comment, Steve. Appreciate that. Councillor Penrod. Philip, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor. And appreciate Councillor Barnhart. Appreciate you bringing this forward. My question is just around the timing. So by the end of May 2025, if I'm understanding your motion correctly, we're supposed to have a report in hand. And so I just would like to hear from administration if that's a feasible timeline to gather feedback, provide an opportunity to attend a council meeting and provide feedback in person, and then to provide a report back to council.
Madam Clerk, do you wish to speak to this question? Thank you.
I do, thank you. Through you to Councillor Penrod, we had actually worked with Councillor Barnhart on that timeline, so this report would be coming to the first meeting in June. So it would give administration till the end of May to provide and put together the survey results, and as well as anyone who is wishing to register to speak with council. So the timelines were talked with administration.
Thank you. And then again, just to reiterate the point from my perspective, if I'm supporting this motion, it's not to revisit or relitigate decisions that have already been made, but rather moving forward, embracing that idea of continuous improvement. How do we make the program even more transparent, even more, easy to navigate for individual groups or associations that are trying to apply for grants to have clarity as to which stream they should be funding, and for council to have the opportunity, frankly, to reflect on our own part in it. I think we learned some lessons around the timing of things, and having some of this like smushed up into budget deliberations and then delayed till after into the new year, I think caused some of the hard feelings in the community around this. So hope we have that opportunity to reflect and see about how we change our own part in the process too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Talabas. Nathan, you have the floor. Then I'll move for final comment from Councillor Barnhart, and then we'll go to the vote.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. I guess, first of all, I support this as well. Any additional feedback we can get on the process, especially with some recent changes, we can learn from that, and I'm a big part of that continuous improvement. So any issues or shortfalls that exist, if they do, we want to hear about them. Any positives that exist, we want to hear about them. We only want this process to get better. A majority of us volunteer for organizations, and we understand the importance of these grants and how it can bring a group to the finish line or potentially end that group. So these are critical, and all these asks are so important that we need to hear from these groups. The only concern that I do have with this motion is just the line that states provide an opportunity for them to attend a council meeting. In alignment kind of with Councillor Van Newkirk, I mean, that is everybody's right. So I don't know if that should be tied into this motion. I agree with everything else, but we're definitely not providing them with a special opportunity. That opportunity always exists. So maybe Ms. Winter, just your thoughts on that, if that needs to be mentioned to achieve the same thing, because obviously we encourage folks to attend regularly. And as you can see today, we don't have too many participants.
Councillor Barnhart, would you care to comment, Councillor Barnhart, yourself? Or I'll wait for administration.
I don't know if they want to say something.
Yep.
Thank
Madam
you.
Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Talabas, the intent of the actual motion in that part of it was actually to offer an opportunity for them to schedule at that council meeting, like at a specific council meeting, not through the open forum or through any other avenue that they could come to council. It was specifically for a specific meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that clarity. That being said, I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barnhart, do you wish to have a final comment before I call the vote on your notice of motion?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, members of council, because I think it is a really good opportunity for us to demonstrate that we are really wanting to hear from our residents as to what their experience has been for the purposes of making it better. Moving forward, easier navigation, all of the words that you've used, transparency, clarity, I think those are the reasons why we do what we do, and we want to make it better. So I really do look forward to hearing, and I hope those of the residents that are listening, or that the word does get out through our connections, that people do come and talk to us. And even if it's good news, that's okay too. Come and tell us what we did right and tell us what we can improve on in the future. I think those are important things to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. With that, would you please initiate the voting process on the motion before us, Council? Thank you. That passes unanimously, 7-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you, Councillor Barnard. Thank you, Council. Next on our agenda, Councillor inquiries, response to inquiries this evening. Madam Clerk, do you have any Councillor inquiries?
No, Mayor, I do not have any this evening.
Thank you very much. We'll move on then. Number 9, our CU update. Mr. Schwartz, if you're ready.
I'm
Mike's
ready.
on.
I'm just being a smart aleck back here, which is what I usually do when I'm not helping LLNS. All right, you should see up on the screen, which you can barely see, a few updates for you, doing our part to help with the environment. Community registration day went smoothly. I'll talk about that in a minute, a little bit more. Summer camps are very popular, as we know, so they're getting full. So if anybody wants to register, please do so. There are still some spaces left in the swimming lessons, and we also encourage you to go on wait lists, as we're regularly watching these and people move in and out. So if you want to get your kids in those lessons, then we urge you to contact us. March 24th, Mike and Edith Spence and Arthur and Ophelia Traverse were both awarded the Good Neighbor Award for their contributions to the community in 2024. So we thank them very much for their efforts. It's part of what makes this community so great. Corporate analytics and technology, I talked earlier about the spring recreation program registration, and the best part about that is I didn't hear from a single counselor on that day. So hats off to everybody, and I joke around, but council has been patient, the community has been patient, our IT folks, our rec folks have done just a fantastic job. They do it purposely, and it looks like we have finally got a solution to the busiest days of the year. So thank you to everybody. Protective Services, we have been approved, Enbridge has approved the Fueling Futures grant request in the amount of $10,000, and that is to allow our fire services to buy updated gas monitors. So it'll help increase the safety of our firefighters and our members of our community. Planning and Development, EIA has installed a noise monitoring device in Saunterville to capture noise levels related to air traffic. You'd be surprised how many complaints EIA gets from residents about air traffic. And I promised I wouldn't say if you buy a house close to an airport, you might hear air traffic. Oh, I think I just did. I think EIA does a great job in our community. They make sure they change routes, but this will give them some data, which will help both the residents and EIA as this continues to be a burr in certain people's saddles. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Schwartz. Any questions for our CAO on his report? Seeing none, thanks, Mr. Schwartz. Next on our agenda is item 10. Now, Newkirk, we'll go to your notice of motion first if we could. Madam Clerk, could you put it on the first if we could? Madam Clerk, could you put it on the screen? Sorry.
For sure. If I may, we do actually have a few notice of motions this evening, so I'll pop up first Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's, and as I scroll, when Councillor sees their name, they can go ahead and read their notice of motion.
Yeah, I'm aware of two, so we'll start with Steve. Thank you very much. Steve's notice of motion, pardon me. Councillor Newkirk, when you're ready, please make your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. At the April 8th, 2025 regular council meeting, I will move that by the 2026 budget deliberations, a report outlining feasible options and the associated costs for implementing an access control system at the BSRC, i.e. access card verification system, with the intent to control participant and spectator access be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe, Councillor Telebus is next. Okay, I thought Councillor McGuff-Swain. Thank you, no problem. Councillor Telebus? Your motion is on the screen. When you're ready, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. At the April 8th, 2025 regular council meeting, I will move that by the end of November 2025, administration prepare a proposed amending bylaw to bylaw 944-19, land use bylaw, that will expand the 100-meter buffer from existing schools and municipal reserve parcels to cannabis retail to include all early childhood service programs, so daycare and after school, and home education programs.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Markov-Swain, I believe you have yours as well, too. When you're ready, please make your motion. Your mic's on. Thanks.
Thank you. I will, on April the 8th, I'll move that by 2026 budget deliberations, administration prepare a report on the timeline and associated costs to conduct a comprehensive review and update of bylaw 944-19, the land use bylaw, to be initiated in 2026.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. For closed session, be put on the screen, please. I'll make it, and then we'll take a moment to adjust the room and begin our closed session. Thank you. I'll move that council move into closed session at 7:21 p.m. pursuant to the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act, Section 21 and 24 sorry, it's there twice on the motion. Just say Section 21 and 24. Thank you. Discussion on the motion from members of council. See none, would you please initiate the voting process, please, for the motion? Thank you, Council. That carries unanimously. And allow our members of administration who don't need to be here to grab the water. No problem. 5-10 minutes. We're live back in open council session after our closed session. We do have an item of business that has arisen from our closed session. Madam Clerk, would you please put the motion on the screen? A member of council willing to make that motion, please? When you're ready, please, when it's on the screen. Thank you.
Beaumont declined to enter into the Collaborative Economic Development Memorandum of Understanding as presented in the March 25th, 2025 closed session report. That administration notify the Collaborative Economic Development Group accordingly, and that the March 25th, 2025 closed session report remain confidential pursuant to sections 21 and 25 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, RSA 2000 CF 25. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to speak to the motion, and I can perhaps assist with that. Any discussion on the motion from members of council? We're good? All right. I appreciate that. So with that, there's no discussion on the motion. Would you please initiate the voting process for the motion? The motion carries unanimously, 7-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Administration. We are adjourned at 7:51. Thank you for being here, and enjoy your evening.